Hello, everyone. So out of curiosity, in the audience, how many people here have a client perspective? Anyone? We got a few. How many people here, and please raise your hands, have a hoster's perspective? Raise your hands. How many people have an investor's perspective? Raise your hand. All right, we have a few here. Very good. Because what I'm going to go through is an alternative view. And I'd like you to think and challenge me along the way if anything comes up. But to set the stage, I'm going to ask you to be aware of all the current players within industry. So everybody that's here today, everybody that's not, think about what they say. Take it serious, eschew upon it, but challenge it at the same time. Anybody remember the first quote, Bill Gates? How many people think 640K is enough to get by today? Anyone? Come on. How about this telephone thing? It's Western Union. It just has too many issues. It's never going to be viable as a product set. Or in the last one I was in the room for, it was the single biggest mobile phone producer at the time. It's a company between contractors and full-time employees of 250 million people. One of the top 3 most valuable brands in the world. Most people have never heard of them now. It's Motorola. Ron Garrick's president of the mobile phone division. Touch screens are useless. How many people here have a touch screen phone? He was wrong, just saying. Beware the experts. How many people have ever heard of Lord Kelvin? The Kelvin scale? Anybody? No engineers in here? Lord Kelvin very famously got many things wrong. He very famously got many things right. The ones that I'd like to point out are, after he received photographic evidence of the Wright brothers, he said manned flight was impossible. After receiving photographic evidence. X-rays, they're a fable. Radio, it has no future. And I call these things out because people know what they know today. They've been successful based upon what they've done to this point in time. And the future, by nature, by definition, is doing something different than you're doing today. But Charles H. Stuhl, head of the U.S. Patent Office, end of the 1800s, said everything that can be invented has been invented. Keep that in mind. You're going to have all kinds of people tell you this is it. This is where the trajectory is going to be for the future. You're going to hear it repeatedly. I heard it repeatedly the last 2 days. But the ones I ask you to keep in mind are at the bottom. From Sir John Templeton. The 4 most dangerous words in investing are, this time it's different. You're going to hear all these things about how you're going to revamp your memory, how you're going to have these orchestration layers, how about all these things are going to fundamentally change everything you do for the future. And I'm going to tell you they're wrong. There are 6 pillars that exist in the IT space, and you work in all of them. Those 6 pillars are server, networking, storage, end-user devices, end-user applications, and enterprise applications. Everything that exists in our world fits in one of those pillars. It has since the 1930s, 1940s. I promise you it will 100 years from now. So what does this have to do with what we're talking about? Most service providers are highly technical. They're single service focused. They lack enterprise level architecture, and this one's huge because from a client, I consume these things. You're talking about how you're going to host something for me. You're talking about how you're going to run a specific service for me. And what I'm worried about are processes, workflows, data orchestration. And that's the big one, data management. And we'll talk about this more in a moment. And they don't understand business processes. As a client, a consumer, a customer coming into your environments, as well as an executive in a company that sells what you provide. Insight, we operate in over 2,000 countries, or about 2,000, sell through 180 countries. We're over $5 billion in revenue, 5,500 employees across those countries. We're fairly substantial. And the individuals that we interact with on a company basis and a provider basis don't know what we do. And that's a problem. So today we're going to talk a little bit about technology, but really not much. Because in the big scheme of things, what most have presented on thus far about their storage, about their software solution stacks, about their orchestration stacks, they don't matter. We're going to talk about data. For every person in here, whether you're an investor, whether you're a hoster, doesn't matter. You're dealing with data. Does that make sense to everyone? For those of you with your phones down, thank you. For those of you with your phones up, you are exchanging data. You're sending a text message, you're taking a picture, you're updating a profile somewhere. It's data. And yes, there's some religious references in there to see who looked close. Because technical clouds, which we're all dealing with, are not soft and fuzzy. They are not simple to utilize from a client perspective. As a matter of fact, they're kind of scary when you're on the other end. So when we walk through this exposition hall, and I'm watching people tell me about their new disk, I think, what do you do with it? And I actually had a conversation yesterday with an individual who knew their product stack inside and out. I have the brochures in my bag right there. Who talked to me about the speed of processing within their particular environment. He was very animated about it. And I said, that's wonderful, but what about its interaction with the other environments in the hybrid world that I have to deal with? He got quiet. And I asked him, what is the single biggest throat choke point that I have to deal with in using your service? He said, price. I said, no, it's the network. I look at the world differently. I consume your services. I sell your services. So how we deal with each other is hypercritical. How many people have taken the time to go out into the industry, those people that are consuming your services at a very, very high rate, and ask them, what do they do? What do their websites exist for? What do they transact? Because the hybrid clouds, which once you get to a certain size company, that's where they exist, are inherently dangerous when it comes to business process and data transaction. So you think of every one of those lightning bolts in there, that's a connection going somewhere to some other hoster. And those storm clouds, it's this massive layer inside a company where those IT teams have to figure out how to hide that chaos from their users. This morning I was woken up by a massive outage covering all of Europe for my company. Kicked off by a power outage in the municipality outside our data center. The more points of presence that exist inside the enterprise, the more opportunities for those such failures that exist. No matter how many generators you have, no matter how many power supplies you have, no matter how many redundant connections you have, the complexity adds. And this is a real picture. This is a picture of my company, my environment, roughly 5 years ago. And I'll ask again, how many people have actually looked into the clients that utilize your services to see what they look like already? Because this picture is scary, and it's very common. You'll see multiple ERPs. Those are through acquisitions. You'll see a whole series of dark blue bubbles. Those dark blue bubbles, those are tied to custom systems that were put in place just to allow things to transact. Some might refer to those as shadow IT. They're SharePoint servers, they're Box, they're Dropbox, they're Tableau. They're all the wonderful things you provide that, to me, create massive complexity in my scale. The lighter blue bubbles, those are 80,000 client portals That's what I do where I'm a service hoster. I'm a service provider out to others. And right in the center, you'll see those kind of pinkish bubbles with the lightning bolts going into them. We had this wonderful idea about 7 years ago. We were going to go to cloud. We had to put complexity into our environment to allow us to go to cloud. Because which ERP do we connect to? Which directory would we utilize? Do you guys understand this? This is the world in which your clients exist. This is where the money is in the future. This is where the value is for understanding data architectures, understanding business processes, and understanding workflows. Because the systems that exist today in environments reflect the organizations that created them. And the more that organizations go out for one-off connections, the more the complexity goes into this picture. And the reason why that's important is it makes things like big data nearly impossible. It makes system optimization nearly impossible. It makes operational excellence absolutely impossible. And yet, in most of the brochures and most of the speaking engagements that have occurred, it's all about speed. It's about expandability, variability, all these other things. But from a CIO's perspective, looking out at what we need to consume, it's not about that. It's about architecture. Because if you want to be successful in this cloud world, multi-tenant, hybrid, all these other bits and pieces that are out there, there has to be a plan. How many people out here have folks on staff that understand business process for your clients? There's a few hands that are up. Very, very good. How many people out here have folks on staff that understand enterprise architectures? Very few hands. How many people understand enterprise architecture has nothing to do with technology? Many more hands. Enterprise architecture is alignment of resources to go about a task and make sure that there aren't redundant assignments of resources within your organization. Now, from a hoster's perspective, so what? Why do you care? Because that's what the clients are evolving to. And over the next 5 to 10 years, this picture, which is what my company looks like today, is going to become more and more prevalent. So determining where you're going to play, how you're going to play, and what resources need to be brought to bear to be successful is critical. So what? It means you got to go processes before technology. If you're selling a piece of kit today and someone buys it, that's wonderful, right? If you can sell more pieces of kit, more services, more hosting, that's even better. But if you do so in such a fashion without addressing the fundamental reason why that client is engaging you, why you're hosting, you're breaking something. What you're contributing to is this. And where the value will lie in the future, mark my words, is this. We went from essentially a non-cloud business, few little connections coming in, added significant complexity to allow those connections to come in, could not track our transactions. We couldn't do simple things like activity-based costing. Who's spending their time where, for what purpose, for what outcome, how to assign resources to different areas. To now we can do that. Each one of those clouds that are out there, every one of those connections, we can monitor the transactions. So we're looking for the data of value that can be leveraged, big data, so that we can do real-time forecasting and predictive analytics. We're just starting to, but we're capable of doing it because there's an architecture, business processes in play, where before there wasn't. Every person in here and every company represented is one of the bubbles on that chart from an enterprise view to the CIO. Now, just looking at it, how many people want to contribute to this mess versus how many want to be part of this? And there's only one thing that's different. And that's approaching things from an architectural perspective and a business process perspective versus a technological one-shot solution. So what? How many people here want to make money? That's it? There's people laughing, come on. How many people want to make money on a repeatable basis over time? You do that by becoming valuable to the organization you're engaged with, not by locking them in against their will. And today, when companies move to a solutions provider, they're being locked in against their will long term. Why? Because the data has migrated and business processes have been built around it. The services you provide determine whether I'll be successful or not in the future. Think about that for a moment. I'm a practitioner. I'm a CIO for a Fortune 500 organization. The services you provide determine whether or not I will be successful in the future. Because of this. This allows me to grow, this allows me to adapt, this allows me to do many, many, many things. And the majority of service providers in existence today sell a technological point solution without addressing business process, without taking into consideration workflow, without taking into consideration future architectural needs. How many people have heard of service-oriented architecture? How many people build to it? So your solution set uses specific APIs that are configured in a way that you can plug them into whatever the situation may be. Wow, far fewer hands. So what I'm challenging you to do is think about what your offering is and how it fits within the market from the perspective of the workflows that your clients use in your environments. Process before technology always. Because here's what CIOs look at. There's 4 golden rules. They've applied in the past, they apply in the future. We look at people, we look at process, and we look at technology. The successful ones do. The ones that tend to get replaced quite often, they focus on technology. And this is a calculation of complexity. If you focus on people first, one level of complexity. You focus on process without people, that's a multiplier of 5 times as complex. You go straight to technology, it's 10 times as complex. Even to the point that if you move to a web-based email, you're probably going to break workflows within that company. So you have to deal with the people first, make sure they understand where they're going, then go to the processes, then go to the technology. And what I'm challenging each one of you to do is go to the process. Learn why people are using your services, what they're going to be using them for in the future, then your engagement is longer term. It's more profitable for you. Cost, quality, time. Pick 2. They're the 3 legs of the stool. They've been there forever. They're going to be there forever. Pick 2. Implementation expertise counts. This goes back to the process expertise and the enterprise architecture. I go external when I need someone to come in to teach me how to use the external environment. Have those resources on your team. Bond with other companies that have them. It will increase your profitability. And the larger part is many companies go to use hosters. They go to service providers because it's automagical. I can move it to somebody else. These workloads are taken care of. I can pay for the variability and the scalability. But the reality is I cannot pay any amount of money to have any of this automated because it's all non-standard. This is standardized because of enterprise architecture and process refinement brought in by implementation expertise external. So as a practitioner, someone that lives in this environment, CIO for a Fortune 500, go look at the enterprise architecture, focus on the processes of what your clients are engaging in, and go find someone who understands that environment and bring them into your organization, or find a partner and partner with them, because that's where the value lies in the future. With that, I thank you very, very much.
Thank you.